All right, great. Now that the recording is going, I will kick it off. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the SAP BTP Garage for April. We're excited to have you here. If this is your first time joining the Garage, welcome to the series. The call is going to be recorded, like I mentioned, so if you don't want to be a part of the recording, now's kind of your cue. Otherwise, we will make the call available on YouTube after the fact. The recording will be live there. It usually takes a couple of days for the recording to be available. I will make sure that the link to the playlist is included in the chat here in just a couple minutes when I'm done presenting. You can also find a link to the playlist in the meeting invite for the call. Our topic for today is covering the setup process for Joule in SAP S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition. I've invited on another excellent expert, so we have Harjeet Judge with us today. If you've joined our series before, you might recognize the name. He joined us last year in September to present their other SAP Discovery Center mission for activating Joule in SuccessFactors. You can find a recording for that in the BTP Garage playlist as well. Just scroll through to just a few months ago, last September, and you can find that one also very relevant for the similar topic. Harjeet has been with SAP for over 20 years, so he definitely has a lot of background, large background in security. He's working now in SAP BTP adoption and consumption team. He's also worked in customer support, has some experience with education, so definitely an expert in various areas, specifically with how-to guidance and supporting customers. In addition to this virtual format that we have, we do offer several partner workshops. So these are hands-on and in-person workshops, which are also a great opportunity to meet the experts and have hands-on guidance in person. Most of the upcoming ones are focused on integration suite here in the registration list, but we do also offer those for Build Code, SAP Business AI, several other topics. So I will provide a link to the partner benefits catalog where you can find the registration for those. And with that, I will hand over to Harjeet. I think that covers most of the housekeeping topics. I'll also provide a link to the mission he's going to be covering today in the chat. But again, that's also available in your meeting invite. So if you need to find it later, that's the best place. So Harjeet, I will go ahead and hand over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Cecily. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the session. Much appreciated. So I just wanted to quickly share my screen. I'll go through a very short slide deck. I've got 2 or 3 slides just to kind of set the stage, briefly talk about what Joule is and how it kind of fits in the overall strategy from SAP in terms of AI. And then we'll dive right into looking at the Discovery Center missions that are built for activating Joule with the SAP S/4HANA Public Cloud. So if you've been looking at some of the presentations from SAP around AI, you may have seen this slide before. It talks about like the overall AI portfolio from SAP. At the bottom of the slide, you see the different kind of large language models that are provided by different companies that are involved in the space. On top of that, we have our AI foundation, which is in the business technology platform. And the AI foundation provides developers the opportunity to build AI-enabled applications in the BTP environment that are grounded in business data. Right, so we have our own kind of framework for interfacing with the large language models that are provided by these third-party companies. We're also embedding a lot of the AI capabilities directly into our LOB solutions, or line of business solutions. So whether you're looking at SuccessFactors from an HR perspective or S/4HANA Cloud from an ERP standpoint, or our Concur or Ariba systems, which provide different type of functionality, we're embedding Joule or embedding AI capabilities directly into those applications as well. Right, so you're able to go into those apps, and for example, in the case of SuccessFactors, if you want to generate like a job description, there's a simple click button that would allow you to leverage the AI capabilities to generate a job description. So we're embedding those types of AI capabilities directly into our LOB solutions as well. On top of the different lines of business applications that SAP has, we also have Joule, which is our digital assistant that will span across the different SAP solution portfolio. So whether you're working with SuccessFactors, S/4HANA Cloud, Ariba, Concur, what have you, we will have Joule available as a chatbot that you can interface with and perform your day-to-day work within those systems. An example for if you're in SuccessFactors and you want to create a vacation request, right? You'd be able to launch Joule within SuccessFactors and type in some queries or ask it to book a vacation request for you, and it'll be able to do that for you. Similarly, if you're in S/4HANA Cloud and you want to create a purchase order or view an existing purchase order or what have you, it will be able to do that for you as well. The beauty of Joule is that it's not just tied to a particular LOB. So if I'm in SuccessFactors and I want to view a purchase order that might be coming from an S/4HANA Cloud system, even though I'm launching Joule from the SuccessFactor interface, I would still be able to get information from this other SAP system around purchase orders or sales orders or whatever that might be. Right? So Joule is a unified Joule instance that would sit on top of these different SAP solutions, and it would be able to work across the different SAP solutions. Yeah. So that's an important thing that you want to keep in mind, is that when you're setting up a Joule instance, you want to set up the Joule instance that can work across these different SAP solutions. And there are certain prerequisites to make sure that that happens. And I'll cover those prerequisites when we actually go through the mission to set up a unified Joule instance that would work with S/4HANA Cloud and other SAP solutions as well. In terms of the different capabilities that Joule offers, right? There are different transactional patterns, navigational patterns, analytical patterns, and so on that are supported by Joule. So the types of things that you can do in Joule include things like where you can ask it information about how to do certain things, and it will be able to go look at a help page or look at some documents that may have been uploaded into SharePoint to give you information around those topics. Right. So if I'm an S4 and I don't know how to create a sales order, I can say, Joule, how do I create a sales order? It will go and look at the help documentation. It can also look at documentation that you may have published in your own SharePoint, and it can give you information to the end user on how you would go about creating a sales order. So that's what we refer to as an informational pattern. Joule also supports navigational patterns as well, where when I ask it a question, it can provide me a link to an application that can surface that capability, right? So if I want to create, again, say a purchase order, it will give me a link in the Joule interface itself that I can click on, and it will allow me to then go to the create purchase order application in S/4HANA Cloud to be able to accomplish my task. That's what we refer to as a navigational pattern. Right, where you're actually presented with a link that allows you to navigate to that specific application or a specific interface to be able to accomplish that task. Then there are also transactional patterns as well, right? So in SuccessFactors, for example, if you want to create, like I was saying before, create a vacation request, it will allow you to create a vacation request. Or if you want to create, there's lots of other different types of transactional use cases as well, both in S/4HANA Cloud and other LOB solutions that allow you to work with the data that's stored in that system directly without actually having to navigate to a specific application. Right? So that's what we refer to as a transactional pattern. And there's also analytical capabilities, which will come as part of the Business Data Cloud, right? So with the SAP Analytics Cloud, where you'll be able to type in queries around show me my sales orders for the past 3 months or something like that, right? And it will be able to actually generate a dashboard for you and display it for you directly within the Joule interface. So that is what's referred to as an analytical pattern. And this is something that is coming. It's in early adopter care at the moment. And this would be part of our Business Data Cloud platform. So those are some of the capabilities that are currently supported by Joule. Switching gears a little bit, I just want to briefly talk about, in order for Joule to work across the different SAP solutions, the importance of the global user ID, right? And a global user ID is a unique user identifier that is normally generated by SAP Cloud Identity Services. So as soon as you create a user in SAP Cloud Identity Services, we will create a global user ID for that particular person as well. And that global user ID is super important for Joule to work across the different SAP solutions, right? So typically what's done is that global user ID would be provisioned into the different SAP solutions. So whether that's SuccessFactors, whether that's S/4HANA Cloud or Ariba or Concur, whatever it might be, the global user ID that's been generated by the user profile in Cloud Identity Services would typically be then provisioned into those different user profiles that might sit in this respective SAP solutions, right? And we're relying on that global user ID for Joule as well as other SAP solutions like SAP Task Center as well. So you'll start to see more and more the global user ID and the role of Cloud Identity Services in Joule becoming more and more important as well. And that's true not just for Joule, but also for other SAP solutions as well. I just wanted to mention that because I work a lot in the security space. So I work with Cloud Identity Services a lot, and the use of identity provisioning and identity authentication is super important for Joule to work properly, but it's also important for other SAP solutions to work properly as well. And the role of global user ID, which is, like I said, generated by Cloud Identity Services, you'll start to see that become more relevant as well for applications like Joule. Last slide, just to kind of highlight the architecture of Joule. It's a pretty busy slide, but it also shows you that the different components that are involved in setting up Joule in the SAP landscape. So on the left-hand side of the picture here is where we have the different lines of business solutions, whether that's your S/4HANA cloud systems or SuccessFactors or other SAP solutions. That's where Joule will be embedded as an application. So when you go into S/4HANA Cloud interface, you'll be able to launch the Joule plugin, and you'll have a little pop-up that comes up that allows you to then ask Joule some questions, right? So that the Joule application is embedded inside these different SAP solutions. Okay? But in order for that Joule application to work properly, it actually requires a lot of other components. We need the BTP subaccount. The actual Joule instance is hosted inside the BTP subaccount. So you'll be actually creating a BTP subaccount with enabling Cloud Foundry in it. Is there a question?
Ist kaputt. Das Kabel war kaputt, also der Stecker war irgendwie an dem Metall zusammengebogen.
Peter, can you put yourself on mute, please? Thank you. Yeah. All right.
I think I muted everybody, but just a reminder, please try to keep your microphones on mute. Thank you.
Right. So, like I was saying, so in the Joule application is embedded inside the LOBs, but in order for that Joule application to actually respond and actually do the work that it needs to do, it works with the Joule instance that's hosted inside the BTP environment, right? So you'll have a Joule environment or a Joule instance inside the BTP subaccount, and that Joule instance also relies on other SAP BTP solutions like SAP Build Workzone to support the navigational patterns that I talked about earlier, right? Where when you type out a question and it gives you a link to navigate to an application inside S4 or SuccessFactors, that type of capability is served or made possible by use of SAP Build Workzone. So the navigational patterns require you to have an instance of SAP Build Workzone inside your BTP subaccount, and then Joule will leverage that to surface those navigational features. It also relies on the destinations to be able to talk to the backend S4 systems and the SuccessFactors systems and the connectivity service as well. And I'll show you what this kind of setup looks like when we set up the BTP subaccount, where we will set up Joule. You'll see the different destinations that are used. You'll see the connectivity service and so on. And I also see the SAP Build Workzone environment. So like in order for Joule to work and respond to queries, it's also relying on the Cloud Identity Services heavily as well. So you will need both IAS and IPS in the picture. IAS would be, or SAP Cloud Identity Authentication Service, or IAS for short, will be used for authentication, right? So when you launch the Joule instance, it will use the user profile from IAS to authenticate the user, and Identity Provisioning Service, or IPS, would be used for replicating users and groups from your LOB solution into the Build Workzone environment that's hosted inside BTP, and that would be used for the navigational pattern support that I talked about briefly earlier. Okay? So that's at a very high level what the architecture looks like. Now we're going to try to go into the Discovery Center mission itself and try to kind of build this architecture out and set up Joule with S/4HANA Cloud. Yeah. Okay. In order to set up Joule with S/4HANA Cloud, you'll need to work with two different missions. Okay. One of them is specifically, let me just close this out for a second. The first mission that you need to work with is called Establish a Unified Joule Instance. And this mission is a precursor to setting up Joule with any SAP solution. So if you wanted to set up Joule with S/4HANA Cloud, this is the starting point. If you wanted to set up Joule with SuccessFactors, you would need to follow this particular mission first before you can actually do the work that you would do with S/4HANA Cloud. Okay, so I'll briefly go through what you need to do to set up a unified Joule instance, and then we can go into the S/4HANA Cloud specific mission and look at what you need to do on the S/4HANA side as well. Okay. But like I said, this is a precursor mission, and the idea is that you would set up a unified Joule instance once that would work across SuccessFactors, that would work across S/4HANA Cloud and any other SAP solution that you would want to set up Joule for. And in order to set this up properly, there are some preparation steps that you would need to go through. And I've done my best to kind of document those preparation steps and make you aware of what it takes to set up a unified Joule instance that can work across the SAP portfolio. Okay, so let's briefly look at what those preparation steps are. Okay. First thing, in order to set up Joule with S/4HANA Cloud or other SAP solutions, you need to have the right people involved from your organization. At the very minimum, you'll need your BTP Global Account admin, because we're going to be doing a lot of work in the BTP Global Account area. You will also need to have your Cloud Identity Services admin, and you will also need the admins for the respective LOB solutions that you're trying to set up Joule for. So if you're doing it for S/4HANA Cloud, you will need your S/4HANA Cloud admin as well in order to effectively set up Joule with that landscape. Right, so those folks need to be involved in the project when you go through the motions of setting this up. The other thing you will need is you need to have the right entitlements for Joule in your BTP environment. Okay, and the way you get those entitlements is by working with your sales team. Okay, so Joule it's not something. Joule is not like part of the BTP EA agreement. Right? So you can't just add the entitlements and provision the Joule service inside your BTP subaccount. It's a subscription service, so you do need to work with your account executive to get the right entitlements for Joule added to your BTP Global Account. So in the mission, I document how you can check whether you have the Joule entitlements in your BTP Global Account or not. Okay? And I'll quickly show you that if I can find the system here. So in my BTP Global Account, if I go in here and look at service assignments, and under service assignments, you'll be able to just search for Joule. And if you see that you have the Joule entitlements available, then you're good to go. But if you don't see those Joule entitlements listed here, right, so just search for Joule, you should have the Joule service available at the global account level in your BTP environment. If it's not there, then you're missing the licenses. What I've seen sometimes happen with customers is that they may have gone through the sales motion and they actually have Joule licenses, but the Joule licenses might have been added to a completely different global account. So you might only have access to one particular global account that you're using within your company. And then as part of the sales motion, it's possible that the team might have provisioned a brand new global account for you where the Joule entitlements are. So that's happened in the past. So when you're working with the sales team to get licenses for Joule, make it very clear to them that you want the Joule entitlements to be available to the global account that you want to use, and not some new global account or some completely different global account that you don't really use for your normal day-to-day activities that you do within BTP. Okay? So that's super important. I've seen that come up quite a few times with SuccessFactors customers where they already have a Joule BTP, they already have a BTP global account, and when they get the licenses for Joule, the team behind the scenes provisions a brand new global account because during the contract it wasn't specified which global account those entitlements should go to. So that's something that I've seen come up quite a few times. So try to avoid that when you're signing the Joule licenses with your account executive. And so that's one thing. Besides Joule, you will also need entitlements for build work zone as well. So if you just search for work zone in your global account, you should have your build work zone license as well. So you can use either the standard plan or the foundation plan of build work zone to set up Joule inside your landscape. Okay. And this is documented in the Discovery Center mission, which is basically is telling you to make sure you have build work zone both as a subscription, right, as a service, as well as a subscription or an application available to you in your global account. Okay. The other things that you need to think about is deciding which data center you want to set up Joule. Right, so Joule is available in a limited or a subset of data centers that are supported by BTP. So when you create a BTP subaccount, you have lots of different data centers that are available for you to create your subaccount in, but Joule is only supported in a subset of those data sets or data centers. So when you create the subaccount for Joule setup, you want to pick a subaccount that is actually supported or pick a data center that is actually supported by Joule. And the list of those data centers that are supported by Joule are listed here. So if I open this up, I should see the list available here as soon as it comes up. So when you're creating your BTP subaccount for Joule setup, you want to make sure that the account that you choose is in one of these data centers that are supported by Joule. So if you're in a US-based customer, you would pick US 10, US 21, or US 30 as one of those data centers that you would create the subaccount in. Okay? So that's super important. The other thing you want to take into account when you're setting up the Joule subaccount is where your, which solutions are you setting up Joule for? So if you have S/4HANA Cloud, SuccessFactors, and some other SAP solution, IBP, or whatever else that you may have that you want to set up Joule for, you want to take into account which data center those applications are in. So if all of your solutions are, say, in a European data center, so when you're setting up the Joule sub-account, you would want to set up the BTP sub-account, or you want to pick up a data center for Joule that is also in the EU data center. So it's closest to the applications that you're eventually going to be setting up Joule for. Okay. And that's what I'm trying to highlight in this particular step is based on support for Joule in the particular data center and the applications that you're setting up, setting Joule for, you would decide which data center you would want to create the sub-account in for the Joule setup. Okay. So that's what this particular blurb in the Discovery Center mission is talking about. Other thing that's important is to have a consistent or a unified Joule instance that can work across the different SAP systems. It's super important that the cloud identity services, IaaS and IPS that are used by those solutions is the same, right? So I can't have an S/4HANA cloud system using one cloud identity services and a SuccessFactors system using a completely different cloud identity services. If that's the case, then it's not possible to have a unified Joule instance, right? In those scenarios, you would actually have to have multiple Joule instances that work, one with S/4HANA Cloud, one with SuccessFactors, and so on. So it's super important when you're doing the authentication setup or security setup for your different SAP solutions that you standardize on one production cloud identity services that is used across your SAP portfolio and one non-prod cloud identity services that is used across your non-prod SAP solutions. Right, so you shouldn't have a separate cloud identity services for production with SuccessFactors and another one for S/4HANA Cloud. In those scenarios, it's not really possible to set up a unified Joule instance that can work across a different SAP landscape. Okay, so that's what this is highlighting. The other thing that you want to make sure is the authentication setup as well, right? So when you have cloud identity services, right? So you have SuccessFactors, you have S/4HANA Cloud. They'll be listed as applications in cloud identity services. You need to also make sure that those solutions are using the same authentication method, right? So I can't have SuccessFactor being authenticated with potentially Okta and S/4HANA Cloud being authenticated with Microsoft Entra ID, right? So the applications that you want to set up Joule for, even if they're using the same cloud identity services, but behind the scenes, if they're being authenticated with a different corporate IDP, that would also make it difficult for us to set up a unified Joule instance. So all of your solutions essentially need to use the same authentication mechanism across the board. Okay? That's what I was trying to highlight with this particular picture in the Discovery Center mission. As I was mentioning before, that we're relying on the global user ID, and this global user ID is typically generated by a user profile in cloud identity services. In order for us to leverage that global user ID, you need to enable the identity authentication user store option. So if you're a customer that has cloud identity services, but you're delegating the authentication to your corporate IDP like Okta or Microsoft Entra ID or Ping or whatever it might be, there's a setting in the corporate IDP setup where you can say, okay, use identity authentication user store. And that allows us to then also look at the user profile that's inside IAS and also pick up the global user ID for that user profile, because that's what Joule needs for it to work properly. Okay? So you need to have the use identity authentication user store toggled enabled in your cloud identity services. Okay? A couple other things. Number 6 is around if you have identity provisioning service that may still be running in the Neo environment, you will need to make sure that that Neo instance of identity provisioning service is migrated to the new SCI landscape. That should not be the case for most customers that are working with S/4HANA Cloud, because they should already have the new instances of cloud identity services. But I've seen this come up with some customers that got their cloud identity services, several years ago. In the past, we used to provision IPS in the Neo landscape. If you still have that type of system, you should really migrate that cloud identity or that identity provisioning service from Neo to the new SCI landscape. There are lots of benefits to doing that, regardless of whether you want to set up Joule or not. And I have links to documentation that talk about how you can accomplish that task. It takes you can do it and usually within a span of 10 minutes in most cases. So it's a pretty painless migration. I would encourage you to do this regardless of whether you're going to be setting up Joule in your landscape. And the last prerequisite that I have for setting up a unified Joule instance is that you will need to have your systems registered in SAP BTP. So under the system landscape in your BTP global account, you need to have the respective systems listed there that you want to set up Joule for. So if you're setting up Joule with SuccessFactors or S4, under the system landscape in your BTP environment, you should see those systems listed and registered. If they're not, then you will have to go and register those systems manually. Typically, for a customer, that should already be there, right? So if we go into your BTP global account and look at the systems area, this is where the environments should be there, right? So under systems, right, you should see your S4 systems and any other system that you are using, right? So I see my cloud identity services here, and I think it's cutting off some stuff here. Let me refresh my page. But in this interface here under systems, you should also see your S/4HANA Cloud system as a registered system. And in customer landscapes, that should be the case. You shouldn't have to do anything manually. But if it's not there, then you can go through the motions of clicking on the add system, pick the system from your list, and actually set up essentially a trust between your BTP subaccount or BTP global account and the respective SAP application, whether that's S4 or whether that's SuccessFactor. Okay. So in the Discovery Center mission, if I close this card, as part of the preparation steps, I have steps on what you need to do to register an S/4HANA Cloud system in the BTP global account if it's not already listed. But like I said, in most cases for customers, it should already be theirs, and you shouldn't have to follow this step. Okay. Okay. Just to speed things along a little bit, now we're done with the preparation steps, right? We've gone through and looked at making sure all the cloud identity services stuff is good. We have all the Joule entitlements and so on all in place. Now we go through the setup phase where we want to run or set up the unified Joule instance that can work with S/4HANA Cloud. Okay, and the way you do that is first thing you need to configure your BTP subaccount in BTP for Joule setup, right? So in the mission, if I scroll up a little bit here, you will need to create a new subaccount, and like I was saying before, Joule is only supported in a subset of data centers that you can typically create a subaccount in. So you need to make sure when you pick the region that is supported by Joule. Okay, you can't pick something else that's not supported by Joule. And also that decision should also be take into account the different LOB solutions that you have and the data centers for those LOB solutions. Like I was saying before, if all of your LOB solutions are in Europe, then you would probably want to pick the Joule data center in one of the European data centers, okay, and choose that as when you create your sub account. You need to go and enable Cloud Foundry and so on. All of those pieces need to be in. You need to create a Cloud Foundry org and space. And last step that you will need to do is also make sure that you have the entitlements added to that BTP sub account as well. So you need to add the Joule entitlements and the build work zone entitlements to that sub account. So if I were to go to my BTP landscape here, this along, and go into accounts, I think I've set up one demo here. So I've set up a sub account here just for a quick demo. So you can see the data center that's the sub account is in. It's in a European data center, and this is one of the data center that Joule is supported in. And what you will also see is if I go into the entitlements here, yeah, I'm already in entitlements. If I search for Joule at the top here, or if I search for Joule in the list here, I should have the Joule entitlements added to this sub account. And so I see the Joule entitlements here. You should also add the build work zone entitlements to that same sub account as well. Right? So not only do you need the entitlements at the global account level, but in order to set up Joule, those entitlements then need to be essentially assigned to the BTP sub account that you're setting up as well for Joule. Okay, so you need the both build work zone entitlements as well as the Joule entitlements added at the sub account level. Okay. So that's what the Discovery Center mission is highlighting as well. Okay. So it basically shows you the process on how you can add those entitlements to your BTP sub account. Only thing that you may not be familiar with is one of the requirements is that for Joule to work, you need to add these trusted domains in the BTP sub account. So if I go back to my BTP global account, under the security, under settings, is where you can add trusted domain. And what you would need to do here under this interface is add the trusted domain of your different SAP solutions. Right? I've gone in and added cloud.sap domain here already because my S4HANA instance I'm using is using the cloud.sap domain. But if you were doing this with SuccessFactors and SuccessFactor was using, say, performancemanager.successfactor.com or something like that, you would click on the add button and you can go in and add star.successfactors.com or something like that to the domain as well. It really depends upon what your URL is that you use to access your LOB solution. And whatever that URL is, you need to include that in the trusted domain setting in the BTP sub account where you're setting up Joule. Okay. Hopefully everyone's with me so far. I'm going through this fairly quickly. There's lots of stuff to cover, so I'll try to speed up even more. Let's go back to the mission here. So this first card is talking about the setting up the sub account in BTP. So that's adding the entitlements, creating the sub account, and so on, and making sure that the trusted domain is set up properly. Then you need to make sure that you set up a trust between your BTP sub account and your cloud identity services. And this is where customers make the most mistakes. When you're setting up the trust between your BTP sub account and your cloud identity services, you do that under the trust configuration. And what you will need to do is you'll need to click on the Establish Trust button here. Let me just actually delete the trust so I can do this again for our demo purposes. It's not going to let me do that. Let's see if I have this up. So bear with me for a second. I'm going to create a new sub account just for a quick demo because I want to show you the trust setup. So as soon as this sub account is created, what I will go do is I'll show you the trust configuration. But before I do that, let me just go back in here. And the point that I was trying to make here is under the trust configuration, when you set up a trust with your cloud identity services, you need to make sure that the trust is using the right cloud identity services. So in your organization, you may have 4 or 5 different IaaS tenants available to you. You want to pick the IaaS tenant that is used by the LOBs or S4HANA Cloud and SuccessFactors, whatever system you're setting up for Joule. Whatever that system is using is what you will need to choose when you set up the trust configuration. So from a list of 4 or 5 different IaaS tenants that you might have in your organization, you pick the IaaS tenant that is used by the S4HANA Cloud system. Okay? So that's super important that you pick the right IaaS tenant from the list. So let me see if I can switch to the other account. Right, so here's my sub account. I'll just quickly show you what other things you need to think about when you set up the trust configuration, right? So right now I haven't established a trust with cloud identity services. The way you do that is you click on the Establish Trust button, and it will give you a listing of the different IaaS and IP, different IaaS tenants that you have in your organization. So, and again, like I was saying before, you want to pick from the list of IaaS tenants, the IaaS tenant that is used by your S4HANA Cloud system in this case, or your other SAP solutions. Okay, so you pick that IaaS tenant. Next thing that is also super important is choosing the right domain to set up the trust. Okay, so here, in most cases, if you're doing this with S4HANA Cloud, from the dropdown, you would want to choose the cloud.sap domain, not the ondemand.com domain when you set up the trust at the BTP sub-account level. If you don't do that and you leave it as the default, which is the ondemand.com domain, when you try to launch Joule in S4HANA Cloud, it will throw like a refuse to connect error message, right? And this all has to do with how S4HANA trust with IaaS is established. And because we use the cloud.sap ACS endpoints, when you set up the trust between S4HANA Cloud and IaaS, the BTP sub-account also needs to use the cloud.sap domain essentially when you're setting up the trust. Okay. By default, it will be accounts.ondemand.com. You cannot do that with S4HANA Cloud. It has to be this. Okay. So when you go through the motions, you click next a few times to establish the trust with your BTP sub account. Okay. So that's what this particular tile is highlighting. You establish a trust between SAP Cloud Identity Services and your BTP sub account. Okay. You will also need to create a build work zone instance inside your sub account where you want to set up Joule. Okay, so remember earlier we added the Joule and added the build work zone entitlements to your sub account. You will need to create a subscription to the application for build work zone, and you will also need to create an instance of build work zone to set up Joule. And this is used for the navigational pattern support that I talked about earlier. So in order for Joule to surface those navigational links in its interface, it relies on the capabilities provided by build work zone. So that's why you need to create a build work zone instance, and you also need to create a build work zone subscription as well in your sub account. And so I have that already done, so I won't go through the motions of doing this for you. But the Discovery Center mission talks about how you create both an instance as well as a subscription of build work zone in the landscape. Okay, so I have this in my environment already. So let me switch over to my other sub account where I have the instance created. if you go under instances and subscription in your BTP subaccount, I have the build work zone application created here, and I also have a build work zone instance created as well. Not only do you need to create an instance, you also need to create a key as well, instance key, and you can do that by clicking here and clicking on the button to create a key file. You can give it a name, right? Click on the create button, and it will create an instance key. And this key is going to be used for creating the destinations later on. It's also used for creating the source and the target systems that you create an identity provisioning service. So what you can do is you can download this key file into your downloads folder and have it open because you'll need this file later on. So if you open up this file, there are some URLs that you'll need. So I'll bring this up for you. Right, so you'll need this portal service URL for setup later. You will also need the UAA URL right here. You need the client ID and the client secret from this key file. And this is used for configuration later on. So you can keep this file open as you are doing the setup. Okay? So that's the build work zone piece. So the Discovery Center mentioned mission documents, how you create that instance and the service key and so on. So you can follow the steps in your environment. Okay. Hopefully that's good. So if you have the subaccount set up, you have your build work zone set up, you've set up the trust with the right cloud identity services, then you can go in and run the booster, okay, in your BTP global account. Okay, so if you go back to the BTP global account with all the pieces in place now, you navigate back to your BTP global account and execute the Joule booster. Right, so here's the booster. And if you're not familiar with boosters, boosters are something that we provide in BTP to be able to automate certain setup. So the Joule booster automates a lot of the configuration of setting up the Joule instance, and it also actually does a lot of the configuration on the S/4HANA side as well for Joule to work properly. So it's basically a pre-packaged automation, if you will, to set up Joule. So what we need to do is click on the start button. It will go through and do some prerequisite checks for you to make sure you have the right entitlements for your Joule. You have the cloud identity services in place. And once all of the prerequisite check is met, then you can go through and choose the sub account that you set up earlier for Joule setup from the list here. Let me go in and see if I can find webinar. Oops. So this is a sub account that I had set up. And then it should automatically populate the org and space for you as well. Okay, so you pick the sub account. It will ask you which products do you want to set up Joule for, and it'll ask you whether you're setting this up for production or for development or testing. In our case, I want to choose testing, and then from the list, you will be able to choose the different products that you can set up Joule for. And the products that are listed here are the ones that have been registered under the system landscape in BTP. So if you don't have your S/4HANA cloud system registered under the system landscape in the BTP global account, it will not show up on the list here. Okay, so in our case, we're setting this up for S/4HANA cloud. So you would pick that, but if you wanted to have a unified Joule instance that works with S/4HANA cloud, SuccessFactors, Ariba, whatever, as long as those products are registered, you can pick those products from the list and set up Joule that would work across those different SAP solutions. Okay. So you pick the products, click next once again, and then it will ask you to choose the different systems in your landscape, right? So it will ask you to choose your build work zone system, and it will also ask you to choose your SAP S/4HANA cloud system that is also registered in the BTP global account under the system landscape. So you might have a long list of different work zone instances that you have in your landscape, especially if you have a work zone instance already. So make sure you pick the right work zone instance that you want to use for Joule setup. And it should have a name in it. I'm not going to pick the right one. I'm just going to pick something random here. And your S/4HANA cloud system as well. But in your case, when you pick the work zone system, make sure you pick the work zone system that you've set up specifically for Joule. Okay, and pick the right S/4HANA cloud system. And when you click next a few times and click finish, the booster will go through its motions. It's going to create a set of configuration in the BTP environment. It's going to create a set of configuration in the BTP in the S4HANA environment as well, in order for setting up Joule with S4HANA Cloud. Yeah. So I won't go through this because we've done this once already. I'll quickly flip back to the Discovery Center mission. So that's this particular tile, setting up or running the booster for Joule with S4HANA Cloud. Once the booster is executed successfully, last step in this mission, in the Unified Joule mission, is to make sure that it's done the work that it's supposed to do. So what the booster does in the BTP side is it creates some formations under the system landscape in BTP. And in those formations, you'll start to see your S4HANA systems, your cloud identity services systems, build workzone system, and any other system that you're setting up Joule for included in those formations. And you can validate that by going to the system landscape in your BTP global account. The Joule will also create a set of destinations. So first thing it will do is I'll also create an instance of Joule in your BTP subaccount. Okay. And what I will also do is it will create a set of destinations in your BTP subaccount. Okay. And I'll quickly show you that in the environment. So I'm going to switch over to a different global account where I have this already set up. First thing, if I go under my global account and click on formations, you will see the Joule booster. Once it's executed, it will create these formations for you, right? So you should have your Joule formation somewhere listed here. Okay, in my case, I believe it was one of these ones, right? So all of your different systems that you're setting up Joule for would be included in that formation. So for example, I see my cloud identity services system, I see my S4HANA cloud system, and so on. So depending upon how many systems you chose when you ran the Joule booster will determine how many of those systems are included in the formation. So if you only ran the booster for S4HANA cloud, then you will just see the S4HANA cloud system, you will see the build workzone system and your cloud identity services as part of that formation. And you need to make sure that this formation is actually completed successfully and the status is set to ready. Okay. If the booster fails to execute, sometimes this will stay in synchronization state, or it'll say it's failed. If that happens, then you basically need to work with support to and get that sorted out and actually rerun the booster to set up Joule properly with S4HANA Cloud. I've seen that happen with certain customers where this stays in a synchronization pattern, or it just stays in a failed status. That means that Joule did not get set up properly in your landscape, and you'll need to basically rerun the booster again by working with support. Okay. Other thing that Joule does is under the sub account, right? So you'll see the formations get created. So after the booster is executed, you will also see. Let me just find my sub account where this is set up already. In your Joules, in your instance, or sorry, in your sub account rather, under instances and subscription, you will see the Joule application get created as well. So you'll need to make sure that this Joule application is listed. And what you will also see is under destinations, you will see a set of destinations that get automatically created. Okay, so for S4HANA Cloud, you'll see a set of destinations, and depending upon which system you chose when you set up the Joule booster, you may see more destinations for SuccessFactors or other SAP solutions as well. But at a very minimum, you'll see a set of destinations that get created for S4HANA Cloud here, and these destinations are later used to create a content provider in SAP Build Workzone. Okay, because you need that content provider to support those navigational capabilities that I talked about. Okay. So that's this right here. So I'll leave it at that. So I think that kind of wraps up what we wanted to do for the Joule mission. The only other thing that's mentioned here in this Discovery Center mission to basically set up the unified Joule instance is you need to create the another destination manually called the navigational service destination. So the steps are documented in the Discovery Center mission. And in order to create this navigation service destination, you need to get that information from the key file that I was showing you before, right? So if you look at the key file, it looks for certain fields like the client secret, you need the portal service URL and so on. And that's what this particular picture is trying to highlight, is how you copy and paste those fields from the key file into this destination when you're creating it manually. So that's the big chunk of work done to establish a unified Joule instance with BTP, right? So this is probably majority of the work. A lot of the stuff on the S4 side is actually automated. So now I'm going to flip over to the actual mission that we have for S4HANA Cloud to show you what you need to do on the S4HANA side as well. Okay, so let me see if I have it available. On the S4HANA side, as a prerequisite, you need to run the booster on the BTP side. So that's what I just did, right? That establishing a unified Joule instance requires you to run the booster. So when you click on this, it's basically telling you to run that other mission first before you execute this particular mission. But after you've done the Joule booster execution, for S4HANA Cloud, you need a certain number of destinations. So these are the 5 destinations. 4 of them are automatically created for you. 1 of them you create manually, so the navigation service. Right, so this destination you'll create manually, but the other 4 should be automatically there in your BTP subaccount that are created by the booster. Okay, what the booster also does is it creates a content provider for you in SAP Build Workzone. Okay, so in Build Workzone, if you log into Build Workzone itself, it will go in. Let me show you. It will actually add a content provider for you automatically. Okay, and it's using those destinations that are created by the booster to define that content provider. Okay, so in the BTP subaccount, let me see if I have access to this to quickly show you. If I go into Build Workzone application, and go into the content manager, not channel manager, this content provider that you see here is automatically added by the booster, and it's relying on the design time destination and the runtime destination that is created by the booster automatically in the BTP subaccount. So this should be in your system, in your Workzone environment, automatically added. Okay. So that is some of the steps that you need to check to make sure that is done properly in the S4 side as well, in the BTP side after the booster has been executed. Okay. Other things that you need to check are some of the configuration on the S4 side. On the S4 side, we also create a bunch of configuration automatically for you, and this is all done by the booster. So let me see if my S4 system is available. Right. One of the things that we do is create couple of communication arrangements for you. So under communication arrangements on the S4 side, we will create this SAP COM 0082 communication arrangement, and we also create this 0647 communication arrangement. And this is the one that is used to expose roles from your S4 system to SAP Build Workzone. Because eventually what we will be doing is we'll be running an IPS job to replicate the roles from this BTP environment, so from S4HANA Cloud into Build Workzone. Okay? So this is done by the booster automatically for you. Okay, and you can see that in the Discovery Center mission is that we'll create the communication arrangements for you. There are 2 communication arrangements. We also create a set of communication systems for you automatically as well, and you see the list of those communication systems available as well. So that is something you can do validation for as well in your S4 system. Okay, so I won't go through the details and try to demo it because we're running short on time here. But you will see these communication systems listed as well. The next tile here talks about, so after you do the validation, what you also need to do, there's lots of steps in this, and we're kind of running short on time, but what you also need to do is to set up a communication system for user replication, because eventually what we're going to be doing is we'll be running a provisioning job to replicate users from SuccessFactors or from S4HANA Cloud into that Build Workzone instance that we created earlier that was created by the booster. And in order to do that, you can create a new communication system of COM 0193 type, or you can leverage an existing one. right? So if you go into your system here, let me show you quickly. If you go in and type in communication systems, right? You should have a communication system of SAP COM 0193. This should be automatically created for you as part of the standard S/4HANA Cloud onboarding. Okay. So when you click on this, it has a user ID that is mentioned as well. That's used, right? So if you scroll down, there's a user ID and password. So this is a user ID. If you click on it, you can maintain this user, and you can also get a password for this user as well. So you need this user ID and you need the password to set up the provisioning job that will replicate the users from S/4HANA Cloud into Build Work Zone. So what you can do is you can either modify this existing system that's been set up for you automatically by the standard onboarding process of S4. But only challenge is that if you click on the proposed password, it will generate a new password for this. And you already have an existing provisioning job in IPS that is used for other purposes in S4. So you'll need to make sure that if you choose this option, you'll need to update the password in that other job as well. Otherwise, that job will fail to run. Okay. So in my mission, I don't have you do this. I don't actually modify the existing comm system that's been set up. I actually have you create a new comm system just for Joule specifically. So you go through and create a communication system. You create a new communication user with a new password, and you use that communication user when you set up the IPS job. But if you did not want to do that and you wanted to leverage the existing comm system, you can just click on the proposed password here and just make sure you update the password in the correct places where it's used in IPS for other purposes as well. Okay, so that's up to you to decide which option you go with. Okay, but in the Discovery Center mission, I create a new comm system and a communication arrangement and so on. Okay, lots of steps here. Once all of that is done, so you created the communication system, there's a few other steps that you have to do. One is to update the content security policies in S4. So if you go into the manage content security, and this is where we basically specify or tell S4HANA Cloud which Joule instance we're working with. Okay, so if I search for content, manage content security policy, go into trusted sites, and it's the first one that you will click on under manage by customer. This is where you can go in and add your Joule application, right? So you'll actually look at the Joule instance that you have in BTP. It will have a URL. You will need to put that Joule URL in here. That's basically telling S/4HANA Cloud which Joule instance it needs to work with, right? So and you can see that we've done this configuration already here. So I'm not going to do it again, but basically when you click on the Joule icon in S/4HANA Cloud, it needs to talk to a Joule instance in BTP, and it's going to look at this particular configuration for that setup. Okay. So I'll quickly pause here. I know we have a few additional steps in the back end, right? So I'll quickly walk you through some of those steps, but I won't have time to demo them, right? So once this content security policy is set up on the S/4HANA Cloud side, there are a few additional things that you have to do. One is to set up the identity provisioning service for user replication. So in here, you have some files that you will download, and it will allow you to set up the source system. So you connect to your S/4HANA source system. It will allow you to set up a target system, which is in this case SAP Build Work Zone. So we're essentially going to be replicating users and groups from S/4HANA Cloud into the Build Work Zone environment. And this particular tile will help you set up the source and the target system to do that application. And again, you need to do that if you want to take advantage of some of the navigational capabilities that are available in Joule. Right, so that's one of the tiles. And then the last step is to actually run the provisioning job for that user application. So after you set up the job in IPS, then you run the user provisioning into Build Work Zone. And if all of that stuff is done, then you can go into your S/4HANA Cloud system. You can launch the Joule icon here in S/4HANA Cloud, and you can start to then work with the interface here and ask questions around, okay, show me my purchase orders, or I want to create a purchase order. How do I create a purchase order? Or how do I create a sales order? That type of workflow would be supported once that configuration that I just talked about is done. So I know we're running out of time here, so I probably won't even be able to demo much here, but like say if I create a purchase order, I should be able to get access to an application that will allow me to create a purchase order, right? So this is the type of stuff that you can do with Joule, and there's a list of different types of both transactional, informational, as well as navigational capabilities that are supported by Joule in S/4HANA Cloud. You can find that documentation in the Discovery Center mission as well. Okay. So I'll pause here. I know we're 1 minute over time here, so I know there's probably questions in the chat that I haven't been able to answer. So what I will do is I'll make sure that we look through the chat, and we'll answer all of the questions and make them available to you in the recording that's going to be shared. Cicely, over to you.
Thank you so much, Harjeet. We had the same problem when we presented this morning as well. It was a lot to cover in an hour. Maybe need to extend that a little bit next time. But thank you so much for joining, Harjeet, and thank you so much for all of the documentation and resources available in both of the missions that you showed. So definitely check out the 2 missions that he presented. I can post the link to the Garage playlist where the recording will be available. And like Harjeet said as well, we'll try to go through the majority of the questions you asked in the chat and try to follow up on those as best we can. So thank you so much, everybody who joined us. We will have another session coming up on May 22nd. We're going to be focusing on the new Joule for developers, so building SAP Fiori apps with ABAP Cloud and Joule for developers. So definitely look out for that. And thank you so much to everybody for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.